The sun dipped low behind the neatly trimmed hedges as 6-year-old Lily giggled, chasing a butterfly across the lush green lawn. Her pigtails bounced with each step, the sound of her laughter filling the quiet cul-de-sac. Suddenly, the front door of the pristine White House burst open, and a shrill voice cut through the peaceful evening. "Hey, you! Get off my lawn this instant!" Karen, the neighborhood's self-appointed HOA president, stormed across the yard, her face twisted in a scowl. Lily froze, her eyes wide with fear as the imposing woman approached. I'm sorry, ma'am. I was just playing." "I don't care what you were doing," Karen snapped. "This is private property, and you have no business being here. Now scram, before I call the police." Trembling, Lily turned to run, but her grandfather, Jack, emerged from the house next door, his brow furrowed in anger. "What on earth is going on here?" Jack demanded, stepping between Lily and the raging Karen. Karen's eyes narrowed as she recognized the retired judge. This child was trespassing on my lawn. I was simply trespassing." Jack interrupted, his voice laced with outrage. "This is a public street, and my granddaughter was playing peacefully on the grass. You have no right to threaten her like this." Karen's face flushed with indignation. "I'm the HOA president, and I'll have you know that." "I don't care what position you hold," Jack growled, his typically calm demeanor giving way to barely contained fury. "You do not get to terrorize a child, especially not my granddaughter." The confrontation had drawn the attention of several neighbors, who began to gather on their porches, murmuring amongst themselves. Karen's eyes darted around, her expression shifting from anger to uncertainty. I was just. "Save it," Jack snapped. "You're going to apologize to Lily, and then you're going to leave her alone. If I ever see you harassing her or any other child in this neighborhood again, I can assure you that there will be consequences." Karen's mouth opened and closed several times, but no words came out. Shooting one last venomous glare at Lily, she turned and stormed back into her house, slamming the door behind her. Lily, still trembling, looked up at her grandfather with awe. "Grandpa, you scared her away." Jack knelt down and pulled Lily into a tight hug. "It's okay, sweetheart. You didn't do anything wrong. That woman had no right to treat you that way." As the neighbors began to applaud Jack's intervention, a sense of unease settled over the cul-de-sac, hinting at the conflict to come. The next morning, Jack woke to the sound of his phone ringing. Groggily, he answered, only to be met with a frantic voice on the other end. "Judge Walters, this is the HOA president, Karen. I need to speak with you immediately." Jack sighed, already anticipating the confrontation. "What is it, Karen?" "What you did yesterday was completely unacceptable," Karen spewed. "I demand that you apologize to me for your outrageous behavior and interference. As the HOA president, I have the authority to." "Authority?" Jack interrupted, his tone laced with disdain. "You have no authority to threaten or intimidate children, Karen. What you did yesterday was the real unacceptable behavior." "That child was trespassing on my property," Karen argued. "I have every right to." "It was a public street, Karen," Jack said firmly. "Lily was doing nothing wrong. Your overreaction and attempt to scare her was completely out of line." "Out of line?" Karen's voice rose in pitch. "I'll have you know that I'm going to file a formal complaint with the HOA board. Your actions were a clear violation of our community bylaws." Jack couldn't help but chuckle. "Good luck with that, Karen. As you may recall, I used to serve on that very board. I'm quite familiar with the bylaws, and I can assure you that you have no grounds for a complaint." There was a brief silence on the other end of the line, followed by a frustrated huff. "Well, we'll see about that. I'm not going to let this go, Judge Walters. You'll be hearing from my lawyer." Before Jack could respond, the line went dead. He shook his head, already anticipating the legal battle to come. Across town, Karen slammed the phone down, her face flushed with rage. She had never encountered such defiance from a resident, let alone a former judge. Gripping the edge of the kitchen counter, she took a deep breath, her mind racing with a plan to take Jack down. The conflict was escalating, and the quiet cul-de-sac was about to become a battleground. The next few days were marked by a tense standoff between Jack and Karen. Karen had indeed filed a formal complaint with the HOA board, citing Jack's interference and disrespect for authority. However, as Jack had predicted, the board unanimously dismissed the complaint, citing a lack of evidence and Karen's clear overreaction. Frustrated, Karen began making daily visits to Jack's home, demanding that he apologize and stay out of her business. Jack, unwilling to back down, refused to engage, much to Karen's growing frustration. One afternoon, as Lily was playing in the front yard, Karen stormed over, her eyes blazing with fury. "I've had it with you people," she spat. "This is my neighborhood, and I won't tolerate any more of your nonsense." Lily, sensing the tension, quickly retreated to the porch, her eyes wide with fear. Jack, who had been watching from the window, swiftly stepped outside, positioning himself between Karen and his granddaughter. "Karen, I've asked you repeatedly to leave Lily alone. If you continue to harass her, I will have no choice but to take legal action." Karen's gaze narrowed, and her lips curled into a malicious smile. "Oh, I'm not done with you yet, Judge Walters. You may have won the battle with the HOA board, but this is far from over." With that, she turned and stormed off, her heels clicking angrily against the pavement. Jack watched her go, a sense of unease settling in the pit of his stomach. He knew that Karen was not the type to back down easily, and he feared that she might try to take matters into her own hands. As the sun began to set, Jack ushered Lily inside, locking the door behind them. He couldn't shake the feeling that the storm was just beginning. The next morning, as Jack was preparing breakfast, he heard a commotion outside. Glancing out the window, he was shocked to see a group of police officers gathered on the sidewalk, their cruisers blocking the entrance to the cul-de-sac. Quickly, he stepped outside, his heart racing. "What's going on here?" One of the officers approached him, a grim expression on his face. "Judge Walters, we've received a report of a break-in at your home. We need you to come with us to the station to file a report." Jack's blood ran cold. A break-in? But nothing is missing, and Lily is still inside. The officer's expression darkened. "I'm afraid it's more serious than that, sir. There was an incident. We need you to come with us immediately." Dread pooling in his stomach, Jack hurried inside, finding Lily huddled on the couch, tears streaming down her face. "Grandpa," they said someone hurt me," she cried, her voice trembling. Jack pulled her into a tight embrace, his mind racing. "Sha, it's going to be okay, sweetheart. I'm here." As he held his granddaughter, he caught sight of a small plastic evidence bag on the coffee table, its contents making his heart sink. Nestled inside was a syringe, its needle stained with a trace of blood. The ride to the police station was a blur for Jack. His mind raced with a million questions, each one more terrifying than the last. What had happened? Who had broken into his home and hurt his beloved granddaughter? As they entered the station, Jack was ushered into a private room where a detective was waiting. "Judge Walters, I'm Detective Sanchez. I'm sorry to say that we have a very serious situation on our hands." Jack felt his throat tighten. "What happened to Lily? Is she all right?" The detective's expression was grave. "I'm afraid Lily was the victim of an attack. The preliminary evidence suggests that she was injected with some kind of sedative or tranquilizer." Jack's heart sank, and he felt the color drain from his face. "Oh my God, is she going to be okay?" "She's being examined by the paramedics, but so far, it seems the dose was not enough to cause any lasting harm," the detective explained. "However, this is a very serious matter, and we need to get to the bottom of it." Jack clenched his fists, his mind racing. "Do you have any idea who could have done this?" The detective leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. That's where things get complicated. Based on the evidence we've gathered, it appears the break-in and attack were orchestrated by your neighbor Karen. Jack's eyes widened in disbelief. Karen? But why would she do something like this? It seems this all stems from an altercation you had with her a few days ago, over your granddaughter playing outside, the detective explained. She's been making threats, and now it appears she's taken drastic measures to retaliate. Jack felt a wave of fury wash over him. I knew that woman was unhinged, but this is beyond anything I could have imagined. She's going to pay for what she's done. The detective nodded solemnly. We're building a case against her as we speak. But I'll be honest, Judge Walters, this is a complex and delicate situation. We're going to need your full cooperation to ensure justice is served. Jack took a deep breath, his mind already racing with a plan of action. You have it, detective. I won't rest until that woman is behind bars. The battle lines had been drawn, and the stakes had never been higher. In the days that followed, the investigation into the attack on Lily intensified. Detective Sanchez and his team pored over the evidence, building a case against Karen that was both comprehensive and compelling. Jack, fueled by a fierce determination to protect his granddaughter, worked tirelessly with the police, providing them with every detail he could recall about his previous encounters with the HOA president. As the investigation progressed, the news of the incident spread through the neighborhood, sparking outrage and concern among the residents. Many came forward, recounting their own experiences with Karen's abusive behavior and demanding accountability. Karen, however, remained defiant, denying any involvement in the attack and accusing Jack of orchestrating a smear campaign against her. She even attempted to rally the HOA board to her side, but her efforts were met with a growing wave of skepticism and mistrust. Undeterred, Karen turned to her personal lawyer, a sharp-tongued and relentless individual known for his aggressive tactics. Together, they launched a counterattack, filing a series of motions and lawsuits aimed at discrediting the police investigation and undermining Jack's credibility. But Jack, drawing on his decades of experience in the courtroom, refused to be intimidated. He enlisted the support of his own legal team, determined to ensure that justice would prevail. As the battle intensified, the tension in the neighborhood reached a fever pitch. Neighbors found themselves torn between loyalty to the respected former judge and the fear of crossing the powerful and vindictive HOA president. The stage was set for a final showdown, one that would determine the fate of Lily, her family, and the entire community. The day of the hearing arrived, and the courtroom was filled to capacity. Karen and her lawyer, accompanied by a contingent of her loyal HOA supporters, sat on one side, their expressions a mixture of defiance and anxiety. On the other side, Jack and his legal team, along with a growing number of concerned neighbors, waited with a sense of grim determination. As the judge took his seat, an air of anticipation filled the room. Detective Sanchez took the stand, methodically laying out the evidence that pointed to Karen's involvement in the attack on Lily. Forensic reports, witness testimonies, and a detailed timeline of events painted a damning picture of the HOA president's actions. The case seemed airtight, and the judge's expression grew increasingly grave as the testimony unfolded. Karen's lawyer, however, fought back furiously, attacking the credibility of the evidence and the motives of the witnesses. He accused Jack of orchestrating a vendetta against his client, painting her as the victim of a coordinated smear campaign. But as the cross-examination progressed, the lawyer's arguments began to crumble under the weight of the overwhelming evidence. Frustrated, he turned to his final desperate tactic, putting Karen on the stand. Karen, her composure cracking, took the stand and launched into a tirade, lashing out at Jack, the police, and the entire community. Her erratic behavior and blatant disregard for the truth only served to further erode her credibility. As the hearing drew to a close, the judge's face was set in a stern expression. He announced that he would be reviewing the evidence and testimony before rendering his decision, but the outcome was already clear to everyone in the courtroom. Jack and his supporters sat in tense silence, awaiting the judge's final verdict. The fate of Lily and the entire neighborhood hung in the balance. The courtroom was silent as the judge deliberated, the tension palpable in the air. Jack sat beside Lily, his hand gently squeezing hers in a silent show of support. Across the room, Karen fidgeted nervously, her lawyer whispering urgently in her ear. Finally, the judge cleared his throat, commanding the room's attention. Having carefully reviewed the evidence and testimony presented before this court, I have reached a decision. He paused, his gaze sweeping the room. The defendant, Karen Duvall, is hereby found guilty of unlawful entry, assault, and attempted battery against a minor. Her actions were a clear and egregious violation of the law, as well as a betrayal of the trust placed in her as a community leader. Karen's face drained of color, her mouth opening and closing in disbelief. Her lawyer jumped to his feet, sputtering protests, but the judge silenced him with a raised hand. Furthermore, I am revoking Ms. Duvall's position as HOA president, effective immediately. Her behavior has demonstrated a complete disregard for the well-being and safety of the residents in this community. She is no longer fit to hold such a position of authority. A collective gasp rippled through the room, and Jack felt a surge of relief. Lily squeezed his hand, her eyes shining with a mixture of fear and pride. The judge continued, his voice stern. Ms. Duvall will be sentenced to a term of 2 years in prison, followed by 5 years of probation. This sentence is intended to send a clear message that such actions will not be tolerated, and that justice will be served. Karen let out an anguished wail, her lawyer frantically arguing, but the judge's decision was final. As the bailiffs moved in to escort her from the courtroom, she shot a venomous glare at Jack, her lips moving a promise of revenge. But in that moment, Jack didn't care. Lily was safe, and justice had been served. The nightmare was over, and a sense of peace finally began to settle over the once troubled cul-de-sac.